guys, how's it going? It's me, Bo, back here on the channel with another cult movie review. Thanks so much for checking out this video. In today's review, I'm going to be taking a look at the crime drama Sexy Beast. This film is widely regarded and has become a true British cult classic. So yeah, looking forward to taking a deep dive and reviewing this today. Just before we get into the review, guys, if you haven't already, please do consider subscribing to the channel. All the support is greatly appreciated. So, Sexy Beast from September 2000 was a movie directed by the filmmaker Jonathan Glazer, marking his directorial debut. I mean, the cast itself, it was an array of established talent, including Ray Winstone and Ian McShane. For me, it's one of those films that I've known about for many years, but I don't know why, but only until recently did I actually sit down and watch it for the first time. As for the narrative, the movie focused on the character Gary Dove, a retired gangster who is now living in a villa with his wife, Dee Dee. Gary was living the high life, sunbathing all day, chilling out. It was kind of like being on holiday 24/7. I must say, I really did enjoy the opening sequence with Gary hanging out by the pool and the song Peaches by the Stranglers playing along. They're a legendary band, and that's a great song. And it just fit perfectly with, the visuals and stuff. So, great choice. Anyways, Gary had left his violent past behind him. He had escaped the criminal underworld, or so he thought. One evening at dinner, Gary was informed that one of his old acquaintances, a man named Don Logan, wanted to get in touch. As soon as he heard the news, Gary was not happy, nor was his wife or his friends. And that's because they knew what Don was like, a crazed, unhinged psychopath. Don, who was played by actor Ben Kingsley, was soon in Spain and in a taxi heading for the villa to meet Gary. We didn't know the reason behind Don suddenly showing up in Spain, but for whatever reason, it was obviously important enough for him to travel in person. So the two sat down, and it was revealed to Gary that he was needed back in London to get involved in a huge bank heist. This was a huge job that was orchestrated by the crime boss, Teddy Bass, and needed an experienced team to handle it. Before Don could even fully explain, Gary politely declined his offer. Gary had moved on. That life of crime that he was involved with, as I said, he put it behind him. He didn't want anything to do with that anymore. The two went back and forth, but they could never come to any sort of agreement. Gary was adamant that he wanted absolutely nothing to do with this job. Gary was telling him all of this, but nothing seemed to register with Don. The guy had tunnel vision, and for him, it was simple. Gary was going to go back to London with him, and that was it. Over the coming days, Don continued to apply the pressure in an attempt to change Gary's mind. He ridiculed him, he pestered him, he argued with him, but regardless of whatever Don did, Gary still wanted no involvement. So this all led to an altercation one evening when Don reached breaking point and attacked Gary. He smashed his head with a glass. Yeah, totally uncalled for, and he completely blindsided the guy. The verbal abuse, the veiled threats, all of that had no effect on Gary. So I guess as a last resort, Don decided to use violence as a way to change his mind. But in actuality, that just escalated matters. We then saw Gary's wife, Dee Dee, pick up one of Gary's shotguns and point it towards Don. She had had enough and wasn't just going to stand there and watch her husband be beaten up by this crazed, unhinged maniac. It was a chaotic scene with Dee Dee shooting Don in the stomach. He, was blasted straight to the floor. And it couldn't happen to a nicer guy. Anyone taking a shotgun to the stomach, you're likely gonna, be dead straight away. But in Don's case, no, he was still clinging on to life, ranting and raving on the floor. Gary came to, stood up, and with the help from his wife and his friends, Jackie and H, they surrounded Don and beat him to death. It was a bloody scene, very violent, with the group, kicking and punching Don, and eventually he did succumb to his injuries. And so, Don was dead. But Don's death only caused more problems, because ultimately the crime boss, Teddy Bass, was going to be expecting both Gary and Don to show back up in London. If neither one of them arrived, well, it would only cause more suspicion. So Gary decided, begrudgingly, to travel to London to do the job. It was a tough decision for Gary to take. He didn't want to go back. He really didn't, but it was the only way. He basically had no other option. When Gary got to London, he met Teddy in person and was asked directly where Don was and could he explain his absence. Gary had no other choice but to lie and pretended that he had no idea where Don was. Now, Teddy Bass, who was played by actor Ian McShane, he wasn't stupid, and he picked up on something that wasn't right with Gary. He knew that something was up, but given the bank heist was the top priority, he kept quiet. Now, one of the central themes that I picked up on while watching Sexy Beast was its criticism of masculinity in the world of crime and violence. The Don character very much represented the classic macho gangster type, their aggressive nature, a person that has zero empathy for anyone. That, of course, was the complete opposite to someone like Gary, who was, quite reserved and had a high-spirited demeanor. You have to understand that, both Don and Gary were gangsters, but the difference is that one had left and, had moved on and was now happy, while the other was still very much involved. With this movie, it critiqued the toxic masculinity that's supposedly created in male-dominated environments, with Don Logan, that character, being the end product. The film also subverted the traditional gangster stereotypes, with the character Gary being a likable protagonist who had finally escaped his criminal life. With Gary no longer part of that world, he was free, and he no longer had to live up to the expectations that lifestyle carried. Of course, he was still very much haunted by his past, and that was depicted in the various erratic dream sequences that Gary had. The life of crime had clearly taken its toll on Gary and left him psychologically scarred, but with the ending of the film, it did give the audience some hope that now that he'd finally left that world behind him, he could finally move on. I didn't necessarily agree with the film's criticism, but I will say that it was an interesting take, and I do appreciate the filmmakers for at least trying something different with the gangster genre. Now, when it comes to the performances, first and foremost, I have to give praise to actor Ben Kingsley, who was amazing as the crazed, unhinged gangster Don Logan. He just had so much charisma. You couldn't take your eyes off him when he was on screen. And not only was it an impressive performance, it was also a memorable one. Kingsley was able to shift his character's demeanor so naturally that it almost felt like someone like Don Logan could actually exist in our reality. Yes, I know who Ben Kingsley is, and yes, I've been aware of him for many years, but I can't say that I've seen very many of his films. I know he's done a lot of work over the years, but he's just an actor that I'm just not that familiar with. But putting all of that to one side, from the limited work I've seen him do, undoubtedly this was his strongest performance I've seen him give. It's just one of those performances that, you hear a lot about, and sometimes you think maybe it's a lot of hype, but then you actually see the performance and it was brilliant, and rightfully so. Kingsley was nominated for an Academy Award. As for the lead actor, Ray Winstone, he too was very good in the role as Gary Dove, the retired gangster. Winston conveyed Gary's struggle very convincingly, and it was hard not to feel sympathy for the guy. For a man who was just trying to make a positive change in his life. Winstone did a great job, and I think this is one of his best performances that he's ever given. But I actually feel bad for the actor, because ultimately Ben Kingsley came in and he outshined him. It's like any other time, Winstone would be the one getting all the plaudits, and probably would have even been nominated for an Oscar himself. But Kingsley showed up and delivered a career-defining performance. I also want to mention the actor Cavan Kendall, who played H, Gary's friend in the film. It was a small role, but I thought Kendall did a pretty good job acting alongside Ray Winstone. But what struck out to me was that the actor actually died only a few months after production wrapped in 1999, passing away at 57. I noticed that his character had a very sickly look about him, and I thought that was just the intention. It turns out that the actor was suffering from some sort of illness while filming the movie, and that would obviously explain everything. And it's just weird to think that the actor never actually got to see the film. And so, dislikes for Sexy Beast from 2000. My biggest dislike for the film would have to be its narrative structure and the focus on the bank heist in the second half of the film. Now, this wasn't a big deal, it didn't ruin the film for me or anything like that, but I don't know, I just wasn't all that interested in the bank heist itself. The actual execution of the scene was handled very well, with Gary, all the guys in the water, getting all the jewelry from the safety deposit boxes. Clearly a lot of preparation had gone into that, and it paid off. It looked great, but I just would have preferred if the story had remained in Spain. For me, the whole relationship between Don and Gary, that was the best part of the film. That was the story for me. And, the whole back and forth, I just wanted more of that. And I actually think that Don was killed off way too early. From my perspective, the heart of the matter was if Gary was going to obviously go back to London and go back to that life of crime. It was about the struggle that he faced internally, not so much the bank heist itself. And so, ratings for Sexy Beast from the year 2000. I am going to be rating this movie a solid 7 out of 10. Sexy Beast was a very enjoyable 90-minute crime drama with its sharp dialogue and intense performances. As mentioned earlier, Ben Kingsley played a truly memorable villain in the character Don Logan and subsequently earned the film some award recognition. He was perfectly cast and outshined all of his co-stars. Technically, this was also a very well-made movie with some brilliant cinematography from Ivan Bird. Taking into account that this was Glazer's first movie, his directorial debut, he actually delivered a very intriguing drama, and it was actually quite impressive, what he actually delivered. As for Ray Winstone and his, career, his filmography, this movie, Sexy Beast, is definitely up there as, one of his best performances. Yes, he was outshined and overshadowed by Ben Kingsley, but regardless, he still was, very brilliant in this film. If you've seen Sexy Beast, then please let me know your thoughts and memories in the comment section below. I will say, for those who haven't seen it, absolutely, this is a recommendation from me. If you're a fan of Ray Winstone, Ian McShane, or Ben Kingsley, then yeah, you have to check this out. But on top of that, if you're just a fan of British crime drama, yeah, you'll definitely like this. And well, that is all from me today, guys. I do hope you've enjoyed this review of Sexy Beast. I'll be back very soon with yet another cult movie review. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and of course, take care.